Before we begin, I ask you not merely to listen, but to listen with the part of you that has been silent for too long, the part that watches behind the mask, behind the fear, behind the wounds you pretend are healed. You have suffered. That is not a question. It is a certainty. And you have searched for relief in the world outside of you, in people who might change, in situations that might resolve, in justice that might arrive. But none of it has delivered the peace you ache for. Why? Because what afflicts you does not live out there. It lives here within the invisible walls you built to protect yourself from pain, yet which have only sealed it in. This world will not stop afflicting you. People will not suddenly become kind. Life will not apologize. But there is something far more powerful than changing the world. It is to change your relationship to it. It is to walk through fire and no longer burn. It is to hear insult and remain unmoved. It is to see chaos and still remain whole. There is a place in you that nothing can touch, and until you find that place, you will be tossed about by every wave, broken by every disappointment, torn apart by every rejection. But once you return to that inner center, once you remember who you were before the world taught you to be afraid, then nothing and no one can afflict you anymore. Not because the world has changed, but because you have. This is not a lesson in resistance, nor in numbness. It is a descent into the soul's deepest knowing, a remembering of the truth buried beneath the noise of your wounds. If you have the courage to hear what follows, you will begin to feel it stir. Let us begin. Affliction in its purest form is not what happens to us, but what happens within us in response. It is not the external blow, the betrayal, the rejection, the humiliation, or the injustice that truly wounds us. It is the interpretation we give it, the meaning we fasten onto it, and the identity we allow it to shape. Most people believe that if only their circumstances changed, they would be at peace. But peace is not born from favorable conditions. It arises from clarity, the kind of clarity that sees through the illusion that outer events are the true source of inner suffering. When something painful occurs, the immediate reaction is rarely pain itself. The first thing that rises is resistance. We say, "This should not be," and in that moment the suffering is born. It is our protest against what is that causes the deepest torment. We recoil, we construct narratives, we assign blame, and in doing so, we cement ourselves to the wound. The wound festers not because the event continues, but because we continue to relive it through thought, emotion, and self-identity. Imagine a man insulted in front of others. The words are spoken, the air vibrates for a moment, and the moment passes. Yet in the mind of that man, the insult lives on for hours, days, even years. He replays it, nourishes it, lets it define how he views himself and others. He has turned a moment into a monument. This is the root of affliction, not in the act itself, but in the meaning given to the act. It is not the wound that bleeds. It is the hand that keeps tearing it open. To be free from this cycle, one must first grasp a difficult truth. The world is not here to accommodate your expectations. It is not here to be fair, to be gentle, to honor your image of how things ought to be. The world simply is. It moves according to patterns that span lifetimes, unconscious flows of cause and effect, the tangle of countless human wills. You cannot control this, but you can awaken to your power within it, your power to see clearly, to remain centered, and to cease allowing your peace to depend on anything outside of you. A man once told me that he could not forgive his father for abandoning him. He said it ruined his life. But when I asked him what truly hurt, he did not speak of the act itself. He spoke of what he told himself it meant, that he was unworthy, unlovable, doomed to repeat the same fate. It was not the event of abandonment that continued to destroy him. It was the narrative he had built around it, the interpretation that he clutched like a sacred text. To dissolve his pain, he did not need to rewrite history. He needed to release his grip on the story that had become his prison. You may believe that by holding on to pain, you are keeping yourself safe from repeating it, from forgetting, from being naive again. But in truth, pain that is held becomes your jailer, not your protector. Every time you react with anger, with bitterness, with fear, you are not defending yourself, you are keeping the wound alive. It is not others who afflict you, it is your own inner allegiance to a wounded self concept. What would happen if you simply let an experience pass through you, without clinging to it, without judging it, without shaping it into a narrative of suffering? What would happen if you allowed pain to rise and fall like a wave without anchoring your identity to it? This is not apathy. This is liberation. The one who no longer reacts, who no longer creates enemies out of events, is not cold. They are free. We are trained from an early age to measure ourselves by how others treat us. Approval becomes our currency. Praise becomes our nourishment, and when we are denied these things, it feels like death. But it is not death. It is the illusion of self that trembles. The real self does not need validation. It does not rise and fall with opinion or circumstance. It simply is whole, silent, and unshaken. To arrive at this state, one must cultivate awareness, radical, piercing awareness. You must watch your reactions, not justify them. You must listen to the voice in your head that says, "I was wronged," and instead of feeding it, question it. You must become curious about your pain, not as a victim, but as a witness. What does it reveal about your attachments, your expectations, your image of yourself? What are you really protecting? When you begin to watch your afflictions instead of being ruled by them, a great distance opens between the event and your suffering. In that distance, you begin to see clearly. You see that what happened was merely what happened. It does not define you. It does not diminish your worth. It does not determine your future. It is only your interpretation that gave it such power. And if your interpretation created suffering, then your awareness can undo it. You can look at the same event and no longer feel the same pain. You can look at the same person and no longer react. This is not denial, it is maturity. It is the inner work of taking back the power you gave away when you believed the world was responsible for your peace. All suffering is a teacher, but it ceases to teach when we use it to punish ourselves. It becomes wisdom only when we understand it as a mirror showing us not what others did to us, but what we have yet to resolve within ourselves. So ask yourself now what afflicts you, and what interpretation of that affliction are you clinging to? Are you willing to lay it down? Are you willing to see it as a passing storm, not a permanent identity? Because once you do, once you see that affliction begins and ends in the mind, then you have already taken the first step into freedom. And from that place, no one and nothing outside of you can ever hold that power over your spirit again. There is a strange truth that many resist their entire lives. The people who disturb us most, the ones who enrage us, betray us, offend or confuse us, are rarely just external problems. They are mirrors. They show us not who they are, but what we have not yet faced within ourselves. To be disturbed by another is to be visited by something internal, something unresolved, something disowned. And in this way, what afflicts you from the outside has its roots in the shadow you carry within. Most people react to others with judgment. She is arrogant, he is cruel, they are selfish. But this judgment is rarely objective. It is deeply personal. It is colored by our own hidden emotional landscape, old wounds, unmet needs, abandoned feelings, and the aspects of ourselves we were taught to repress in order to survive or be accepted. And because these parts remain in the unconscious, we do not see them in ourselves. We see them in others. We project them outward like a film, and then we fight our own reflection as if it were a foreign enemy. When you feel a surge of hatred towards someone, pause and look inward. Ask not what is wrong with them, but what within me is being awakened by this person's presence. Perhaps they remind you of a weakness you deny in yourself. Perhaps they embody a desire you have buried. Perhaps their freedom stings because you have lived in quiet submission. The pain they seem to cause is not born from them. It is born from what they touch in you. They are not your affliction. They are the signal fire pointing toward what you have yet to integrate. The ego resists this truth because it wants to be righteous. It wants to believe that others are the problem, that peace will arrive when they behave better, speak softer, or disappear. But the soul knows otherwise. The soul is not interested in blame. It is interested in wholeness. And to become whole, you must gather all the pieces of yourself, the gentle and the harsh, the noble and the primitive, the celebrated and the shamed. You must turn toward what you have rejected in yourself and reclaim it not as a weapon, but as a source of awareness. To withdraw projection is to take responsibility for your inner world. It is to recognize that every emotional reaction is a message, not a justification for attack, but a window into the unseen. The person who disrespects you may awaken your forgotten need to set boundaries. The one who manipulates you may reflect your own hidden urge to control outcomes. The liar may irritate the part of you that lies to yourself to keep things comfortable. None of this excuses harmful behavior in others, but it shifts the focus from reaction to reflection. This shift is where your true power begins. When you stop trying to change others and instead investigate what they bring up in you, you become sovereign again. No longer at the mercy of the world, you become its interpreter, its alchemist. You turn irritation into insight, conflict into clarity, and pain into understanding. And in doing so, you take back what was always yours, your energy, your peace, your authority over how you respond. Consider the people who have most wounded you, not just those who made mistakes, but those who pierced your emotional armor. What qualities did they possess? What reactions did they stir in you? What did they reflect that you were not ready to see? Perhaps you were never allowed to express anger, and so you vilify anger in others. Perhaps your need to feel safe led you to shame those who appear reckless. Perhaps the part of you that longed to be seen was neglected so deeply that now you resent those who confidently take up space. The path to liberation lies not in rejecting these people, but in recognizing the symbolic role they play in your inner drama. They are actors on the stage of your unconscious, playing out themes you have not yet confronted, and when you see this, truly see it, something remarkable happens. the affliction begins to dissolve. It no longer controls you because it no longer confuses you. What you once saw as an enemy becomes a message. And once the message is received, the conflict has no more purpose. This is not a journey of indulgence or blame. It is a journey of integration. The more you reclaim your projections, the more whole you become. You are no longer fragmented between the self you present and the self you bury. You no longer fear the truth of who you are, and when that fear dissolves, others lose their power to disturb you, because what they trigger has already been met, already been accepted, already been embraced within your own consciousness. This is the great irony of human conflict. We run from what we need to face, and in running we give it strength. But in turning inward, in meeting ourselves with honesty and courage, we rob the affliction of its disguise. We see the child within, still afraid. We see the old story still haunting, and in seeing it, we offer it something it has never had before, our full attention, our conscious gaze. What we reject persists, what we avoid returns, but what we face transforms, and in this act of transformation we become free. Not because the world changes, but because we no longer need it to validate our inner state. So the next time you are disturbed by another, stop. Pause, breathe, say to yourself, this too is me, this too belongs. And then ask the question few are brave enough to ask, what in me has come to be healed through this discomfort? In that question lies the end of projection, the beginning of wholeness, and the profound recognition that nothing and no one truly afflicts you. Only the parts of yourself you have not yet reclaimed. There is a kind of affliction that does not come from a specific wound, a betrayal, or a moment of shame. It comes from the very structure of who we think we are. This is the most subtle and enduring form of suffering. It is not caused by others, not even by life itself, but by the identity we have built, a self constructed through years of conditioning, fear, and survival. It is this false self that constantly seeks approval, clings to control, panics at the thought of rejection, and suffers when it cannot maintain its image. The affliction that truly imprisons us is not what others do to us, but who we believe we must be in order to be safe, worthy, or loved. This identity, this ego, is not our essence. It is a mask. It was born in childhood, shaped by expectations, reactions, rules, and the longing to belong. It learned to please, to hide, to adapt, and though it served a purpose then, it becomes a prison now. It feeds on conflict. It thrives on comparison. It resists change because change feels like death, and in many ways it is. To release this false self is to allow a death, not of your being, but of the illusion that you are what you had to become to survive. When someone hurts us, the false self cries out, "How dare they?" it says. "Don't they know who I am?" It clings to its pride, its narrative, its status. But what if the deeper truth is not about being respected or defended, but about being willing to lose the part of yourself that keeps demanding protection? What if peace does not come from winning the argument, getting the apology, or proving your worth, but from no longer needing those things at all? The self that aches for validation is the same self that breaks under criticism. The self that wants to be admired is the same self that withers when ignored. And the self that needs to be seen is the self that will suffer in the face of invisibility. This self is not wrong, it is merely afraid. It is built on fragility, on impermanence. And as long as your identity is tied to it, your peace will be hostage to every passing opinion, every perceived slight, every moment of abandonment or neglect. To be free from affliction, you must be willing to let this self die, not by force, not through denial, but through a deep, honest surrender. You must see it for what it is, a mask worn for protection that has become fused to your skin, and you must remove it not with hatred, but with compassion. You must say, I no longer need to pretend, I no longer need to perform, I no longer need to be anything other than what is real in me. This is a difficult death. It is the death of the story you have told yourself, the story that says you are only valuable if others love you, the story that says you are only safe if you are in control, the story that says you are only whole if nothing ever goes wrong. These narratives must fall away because they are the very source of your suffering. And what remains after their fall is not emptiness, it is truth. It is the stillness of being that does not need to explain itself. It is the quiet confidence of a soul that no longer needs to be anything at all. When you let the false self fall, you stop reacting to every criticism, every disappointment, every perceived attack. You begin to see things as they are, not as they threaten your image. You no longer take things personally because there is no fragile self left to protect. You no longer need to retaliate, defend, or prove. You are no longer touched by the waves because you are rooted in the ocean floor. This transformation is not about becoming indifferent or cold. It is about becoming real. When the mask falls, what arises is not apathy, it is presence. You become deeply alive, responsive instead of reactive, connected to what is true instead of what is expected. You are no longer at war with life. You are no longer trapped in the exhausting need to be seen a certain way. You begin to walk through the world quietly, yet with a strength no one can take from you. But understand this, the ego will resist this death with all its might. It will whisper that without it you are nothing. It will scream that if you stop defending yourself, you will be destroyed. It will bargain, plead, and lash out, because the false self lives on fear, and your awakening is its end. But if you can sit with this fear, if you can stay with it, not run from it, you will witness something miraculous. The fear dissolves, the self that was afraid dissolves, and all that remains is a vast, open stillness that cannot be broken by the world. And from that stillness, you begin to live differently. You begin to speak from your center rather than your insecurity. You begin to act not out of defense, but out of clarity. You begin to give without needing to receive, to love without fear of loss, to be without striving. You become unshakable not because life no longer moves you, but because nothing can uproot the truth you have become. This is the path of inner liberation. It is not a comfortable path, but it is a true one. And in walking it, you do not become superior, distant, or invincible. You become simple, whole, and deeply at peace with existence. And in that peace, nothing and no one can afflict you anymore, not because the world has changed, but because the self that could be afflicted has quietly fallen away. There is a place within you that has never been touched by chaos, never been altered by praise or blame, never been wounded by rejection or exalted by attention. It does not react, it does not flinch, it does not grasp, it simply watches. Most people live their entire lives without discovering this place. They live from the surface of their being, constantly thrown off balance by every wave that passes. They feel peace only in brief moments when the world happens to align with their preferences, But true peace does not depend on the alignment of the outer world. It emerges when we descend from the restless noise of the mind into the stillness that has always been there beneath it. We are taught to live outwardly, to measure, compare, perform, defend. We look to others to tell us who we are, and in doing so we become unrooted, pulled in every direction, trapped in cycles of hope and fear, praise and disappointment. But there is another way of being, a way that is not built on striving or defending or achieving. It is the way of the quiet center, the still point, and once we touch it, even for a moment, we begin to understand that what we called affliction was never truly about what was happening. It was about where we were standing within ourselves when it happened. The storms of life do not stop. People will misunderstand you. Life will throw the unexpected at your feet. Loss will come. Pain will visit. But you are not the storm. You are not even the wind, tossed branches. You are the root beneath the earth. The one who lives from this place is no longer reactive. They no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, they ask, from where in me is this being witnessed? And in that shift, they reclaim their ground. They stop being pulled into the drama of every moment and begin living from the deep silence that holds all things without being disturbed by any of them. This stillness is not passive, it is not numb, it is not distant, it is awake, it listens, it perceives. It responds not from panic, not from ego, but from clarity. When you are rooted in this presence, you do not need to prove yourself. You do not need to control others. You do not need to defend your worth or your truth. You simply act from knowing, and your knowing is not shaken by what others think or do. To live in this way, one must begin by stepping back from the mind's compulsions, its arguments, its projections, its judgments, not rejecting them, but observing them as one would observe clouds drifting across the sky. You begin to notice the movements without becoming them. You feel the fear rise, but you do not become the fear. You feel the anger flare, but you do not speak from it. You let it pass through like a visitor, not a master, and the more you do this, the more space you find inside yourself. A space untouched by the emotions and the stories they try to write. That space, that awareness, is who you truly are beneath the conditioning, beneath the patterns. And from that place, no one and nothing can touch you, not because you are closed, but because you are open in a different way. You are no longer defined by what happens. You are defined by your capacity to witness what happens without being diminished by it. There is no resistance in you and therefore no suffering. The world may bring pain, but it does not shake your foundation. People often ask, how do I stop caring what others think? But that question arises from the wrong level. As long as you remain at the surface of the self, where identity is wrapped in perception, you will always care. It is only when you begin to live from the deeper center that the question dissolves. Not because you force yourself not to care, but because you no longer need external reflection to feel whole. You no longer seek your reflection in broken mirrors. In this way, stillness is not something you create. It is something you return to. It has always been there, waiting, beneath the noise, beneath the striving. Like a lake beneath the winds, unmoved at its depths, and the more you dwell there, the more the surface loses its power over you. You begin to see the dance of the world, the praise and the blame, the love and the loss, the chaos and the calm, as movements of life, not verdicts upon your being. To find this stillness, you must be willing to sit in silence, not just external silence, but internal. You must be willing to let go of the need to be right, to be heard, to be seen a certain way. You must unclench your hands and stop grasping at control. Only then can you begin to sink. And as you sink, not downward but inward, you will begin to feel it. A vastness that cannot be shaken, a presence that watches without judgment, a calm that is not the absence of noise, but the presence of something deeper than noise. And once you have touched it, you will know. You will know that nothing outside of you can truly define you. Not the praise, not the blame, not the chaos. You are not those things. You are not the roles you play, not the names you are given, not the opinions thrown at your feet. You are the silent one behind it all. And the more you trust that place, the less the world can move you from it. This is not detachment, it is not indifference, it is full presence, it is the knowing that remains when all else falls away. It is the peace that no circumstance can touch. It is the final liberation, not because life has become easier, but because you have stopped being ruled by the parts of you that once feared it. And when you live from this place, you no longer ask the world to stop hurting you. You no longer plead for others to change. You simply rest in what is real, and from there you walk with quiet strength, with dignity, with grace. Not because the world has grown gentle, but because you have remembered who you truly are beneath all affliction.